listening.
When the world sleeps, the whispers begin. They say a window is a promise. Light on one side, a life on the other. In the small hours, though, when the city holds its breath, some windows stop promising anything at all. Apartment 8C, Lachlan House. A brick building older than the street it stands on. No view, no skyline. Just an interior shaft where rainwater collects and pigeons come to die. Tenants called it the light well, though no one remembered it ever being light. At 2:03 a.m. on the first Tuesday of winter, the tenant of 8C, Marla Iverson, drew her blinds and found a world beyond the glass that wasn't the shaft or the bricks or even the dark. It was a road with no markings, a field with no horizon, a sky with no stars. By dawn, she would leave a note for the superintendent. By dusk, she would leave a message for anyone who would pick up. None of them were meant for us. We heard them anyway. This is Case File 1041F, the window that faced nowhere. Marla had lived alone since spring. She worked second shift at a warehouse by the river. By the time she made tea and kicked off her shoes, the rest of the building was already asleep. Thin snores through thin walls, televisions murmuring like distant aquariums. That night she pulled the cord, and the blinds slid up. No shaft, no brick, no opposite windows with their blue private evenings. Only a landscape that refused to resolve. It looked like distance and close-up at the same time, like fog taught to hold a straight line. She did what everyone does when a machine misbehaves. She checked the obvious. She opened the latch. Window sealed. She pressed her face to the glass. Cold, but not like glass. Cold like a shadow you can't explain. At 2:11, a sound came through. Not from outside the apartment, but from inside the pane itself. A thin singing, like a wine glass when someone runs a wet finger around the rim. She reached for her phone and filmed 30 seconds of it. In the footage, the view is just a smear. The sound is almost nothing. But if you slow it down, there's a pattern. 4 notes descending, again and again. She slept on the couch with the kitchen light on. She didn't close the blinds. In the morning, the shaft was back. A dead pigeon in the angle of the drain. A scrap of plastic fluttering like a trapped jellyfish. She told herself it was a trick of the eyes. She told herself she was tired. She told herself not to tell anyone. She told the window nothing at all. 3 days later, the superintendent, Ralph Morales, left a voicemail on the building office line. I got a lady in 8C says her window ain't a window. She ain't drunk. She ain't making a fuss. She just wants me to look. I looked. I seen a hallway. But there ain't any hallway. The courtyard's in there. So either I'm losing it, or the bricks are. He signed the maintenance ticket, visual anomaly. Circled it twice and put it on the bottom of a stack he didn't intend to touch. On the 4th night, 2:03 a.m. like before, Marla texted a number she hadn't used in a long time. The recipient, Evan, didn't answer. She set the phone on the sill like an offering. The glass sang. The screen lit. No message sent. No message received. Just a soft bloom of light washing her face, a color that doesn't exist in this world. She wrote a note on a yellow legal pad. 8C. Window issue. Not a reflection. Not a hallucination. When blinds are up 2 to 3 a.m., the view changes. No brick shaft, no opposite windows. It looks like a road, or something waiting to be a road. She left the note with the doorman. By week's end, it was in a file cabinet with a label that read, "Anomalous Complaints," handwritten in a shaky block script from 30 years ago. This was not the first time Lachlan House had a window that forgot where it was supposed to look. I met Marla the following Monday. She had the haunted look of someone who'd taught herself not to blink. She didn't want a camera in the room. She didn't want an audience. She wanted to ask a very simple question. If I'm not the only one who's seen it, why does it want me? I asked to see the window. She nodded. We stood at the edge of her kitchen like people paying last respects. The blinds were down. She had taped the cord to the wall so it wouldn't sway and startle her. She had placed a chair against the sill like a doorstop against a dream. "Please," she said, "not the whole way up." I lifted the slats 2 inches, 3, 5, brick, paint flakes, rust. A scrap of plastic still there, still imitating a jellyfish. We both exhaled. She laughed. It sounded like air leaving a tire. I raised the blinds halfway and set them there. Nothing. We chose 2:03 a.m. anyway. We waited. We drank bitter tea and didn't finish it. The radiator clicked. A downstairs faucet coughed. Somewhere, a woman coughed back. At 2:03, the kitchen light dimmed. Not off, not flicker, just like it remembered a different brightness and put itself there. The bricks went soft at the edges. The drain became a dark coin and fell through nothing. The opposite wall stretched into a horizon line that never settled where horizons should. The pane was cold. The glass sang. 4 descending notes. Again. "It never shows the same thing twice," she said. "What did you see the first night?" "A field. And now?" She swallowed. "A room. But not here." It was a room without furniture, without corners. A room built out of the idea of a room by someone who had never stood in one. Angles almost right. Shadows that didn't belong to anything at all. At the far side, where a wall might have been, something like a door tilted at the wrong gravity. I raised my hand. The view brightened a fraction. Like light is an attention that can be encouraged. In the view, a silhouette raised its hand back. Marla didn't scream. She stopped being in the room the way a person stops being on a ledge once they have decided to jump. "Close it," she said. "Please." I tried. The blinds didn't move. The cord was already in my hand. The cord was already around my wrist. The cord was cold. The silhouette in the knot room put its palm flat to the pane from its side of the nowhere. It had too many fingers, or maybe just not enough distance. The radiator groaned. The lights brightened. The bricks came back all at once like a face you're relieved to recognize after trying to be brave. We turned the blinds down until fabric met sill and wood and whirled. We didn't raise them again that night. In the city archives, Lachlan House appears under a previous name, Grammar House, built 1919, interior light well, 17 fire code violations in its first 10 years. A tenant complaint, 1927, window looks into a hall that never ends. Soot on glass when touched from inside. Children hear song no one taught them. A second complaint, 1942. I can see the street that isn't there anymore. A maintenance order, 1956. Seal 8C window with painter's tape until glazing can be replaced. Tenant reports, view of a place I visited before I was born. And a coroner's note, 1963. Cause of death: asphyxiation by gas heater. Body found beneath open sash. Window overlooks interior shaft. No signs of forced entry. Family insists the deceased fell forward. The sill shows shallow scratches, consistent with fingernails resisting a pull from outside. I found a map that shows the block before the building was built. A brick factory stood here then. It burned twice and was rebuilt wrong the second time, with walls that didn't align with anything else in the neighborhood. When smoke drifted up, someone wrote, "It refused to remember the sky." It's a sentence that means nothing unless you've seen a window forget. Marla stopped sleeping in the bedroom. She chose the couch and the kind of half-sleep that doesn't recharge anything. She put towels along the baseboards like a person afraid of floodwater. She taped the blinds down. She taped the tape to the wall. At 2:03 a.m., a seam of darkness formed at the bottom edge anyway, like the night finding a way to breathe. She called the number she had not called in years. The voicemail, the voice she used to sleep against, said, "Leave it," and then the beep, and then a long, white space where confession might live. "It's back," she said. "The thing that isn't a window. I thought it was a dream, but I'm not that interesting. It's chosen hours, like a bus schedule. I think if I wait for it, it gets closer. I think if I don't, it gets lonely." On the sixth night, the silhouette returned. Not a human outline, not a mistake in the glass. Something that knew enough to pretend to be a person. It set its hand against the pane and left a smear. When dawn came and bricks replaced it, the smear remained. Not on the glass, but in it, like smoke cooled into a fingerprint. Ralph came up with a putty knife and a length of rope, the kind a man uses when he expects to argue with gravity. He lavered the sash and cursed at it and found it wouldn't lift. "Paint," he said, like a diagnosis and a prayer. He left, promising a return he did not intend. Marla sat at the table. She placed her palms on the laminate and pressed hard, as if the world could be held still if she contributed enough pressure. She listened for the glass. She half wanted it to sing. It did. 4 notes, descending. This time, a fifth below them, a harmony like a warning. There are theaters where the curtain is a wall that some other world taught to drape. There are doors that are not rectangles, but behaviors. At 2:03 a.m., the blinds rose without help. The tape unscrolled itself with a sound like paper remembering rain. The cord unknotted from the cleat and took a slow breath. Marla stood. She did not walk closer. That was the remarkable thing. She stayed where she was and waited, and still something moved toward her. The nowhere had learned a trick. Parallax. As she turned her head, the knot room shifted properly now, obeying the way our eyes tell stories to depth. The door tilted into the right gravity. It suggested a handle and a seam and a promise. "Don't," I said, from a place where my voice had lost its right to instruct anyone. She lifted her hand. The glass lifted its temperature to meet her halfway, as if the pain now inhaled from her side. The silhouette approached from the far edge. If there are edges where edges do not belong, it had a height now, a weight to its shadow, a rhythm to its steps. "Do you smell that?" she asked. I did. Ozone. Old rain. A hospital corridor that had been mopped too often with the wrong water. The silhouette leaned close enough to be a face. It had not earned one. It suggested one anyway. Where a mouth would have been, the pain's tone raised a half step and held. The latch clicked. No one had touched it. The sash slid up 2 inches. A breath of air that did not belong to this building entered this building. It had the temperature of a place that did not choose weather, but remembered it from a description. Marla didn't scream. She said a name. It wasn't mine. It wasn't the superintendent's. It was a name that belonged to a voice on a voicemail that had learned to sleep without her. Evan. From the nowhere, something set it back, not with sound, but with agreement. A shape of acceptance in the pain that felt like being nodded at by a thing that cannot nod. The sash rose another inch. The blinds sighed and gave up being the boundary they had pretended to be. I took a step. The floor took one back from me. There are moments when your body knows you are not the animal in charge. The window was now a mouth, and the room had been invited to be the tongue. "Please," I said. I was speaking to her. I was speaking to the pain. I was speaking to the long corridor that had never had a corner to turn. "Please." She put her fingers under the sash. The silhouette put its fingers over hers. Not cold, not warm. Something like grabbing the handle of a suitcase you dream you packed. She lifted. It helped. The window came open like a blinking eye. Behind the glass, no brick, no shaft, no city. A hallway lined with doors, each a little wrong, each a little real. The nearest had a number on it that tried to be 8 and kept arriving at infinity. The smell of ozone deepened. The drone climbed a step toward a pitch that has never been part of any song we survived. "Don't," I said again, useless as weather. She leaned. The nowhere leaned back. Her hair lifted, as if a train were passing in a tunnel none of us could see. "I can hear him," she said. And then she wasn't exactly in the kitchen anymore. She was half in the kitchen and half in a space that thought kitchens were rumors. She did not vanish. Vanishing is neat. She smeared. She became a long exposure of a person trying to remain a person while the shutter refused to close. I grabbed her wrist. It was her wrist. I felt the tendon. I felt the pulse. I felt something else, a second rhythm beneath the human one. Like a house has a heartbeat when the pipes knock in winter. The silhouette placed its other hand on mine. It had learned the exact pressure we would not resist. And then, the room had the wrong number of breaths in it. The sash lifted one more inch. There was a sound like a sail filling on a ship that doesn't remember oceans. The light in the nowhere brightened. Not day, not lamp, the idea of brightness. We came back to the kitchen 1 inch at a time. The blinds slammed down as if ashamed. The sash met the sill with a gentle click that has no business being gentle. Marla fell into the chair. She vomited onto the tile. It was clear, as if her body refused to make color for the story that tried to swallow it. When she looked up, her eyes were her eyes again, except the right iris held a tiny fleck of a color I have never seen on this side of anything. After that night, the pattern changed. 2:03 a.m. became 2:17. Not random, ritual. The pain no longer sang its 4 notes. It breathed. A long, slow inhale that measured out exactly 9 seconds, and an exhale that lasted none. A rhythm that counts us but does not count itself. The view no longer cycled through fields and rooms. It chose the hallway, the one with doors that learned to turn 8s into infinities. Sometimes a door would be ajar. Sometimes a door would not be there, and the space would fold where a door should have been. Marla stopped going to work. She stopped answering the phone. She left notes beneath the kettle. Don't open. She left notes inside the fridge. Eat. She She left a note on her own mirror. Stay. Ralph came up with the man from the glass company. The man from the glass company knocked on the pane and frowned. He measured the sash and spoke words like settlement and out of square. And the window did not disagree until he said the number 8. When he said 8, the pane fogged in a circle where his breath would have been if the glass allowed breath to matter. The circle lingered too long. He put away his tape and said he'd come back with the right tools. He did not. We placed a wardrobe in front of the window. We screwed it to the wall. We put a bookcase in front of the wardrobe. We filled the shelves with heavy books whose pages had survived wars and divorces and floods. At 2:17, the wardrobe breathed. The books leaned toward a pressure you cannot put a number on. A single page turned and turned and turned without tearing, as if paper had learned to be water. I asked Marla what she heard when the pane breathed now. "Names," she said. "Whose?" "Everyone who ever looked out of here." "What does it want?" "I think it wants us to stand in the place where a view should be." That night she dreamed she was a child again, standing on a chair, hands on the sill, waiting for her father's car to turn into the lot. She woke crying. No memory is safe when a window stops agreeing to be a window. On the 10th night, the pane showed a reflection, not ours. A kitchen, a kettle, a chair, a note on a mirror that said, "Stay," in a hand that wasn't hers, in a language that understood ours too well to need our alphabet. The sash clicked. We did not move. The blinds rose an inch. We did not breathe. The nowhere leaned, listening. And then, from behind the wardrobe, a voice that remembered how to be a man's voice, even if the throat that taught it had been gone a long time. "I'm here." It was not Evan's voice. It had practiced voices. It had many to choose from. Marla stood. She pressed her forehead to the wardrobe like a confessional. She said nothing. She nodded to a thing that cannot nod. In the mirror, on the opposite wall, the fleck in her iris was larger. When dawn came, the wardrobe no longer touched the wall. It had been pulled 1 inch closer to a darkness that had not earned the right to be a room. We drilled the screws deeper. We braced the shelves with a belt. We tied the belt to the stove. We tied the stove to a reality that does not issue receipts. Some people have windows that admit light and weather and one neighbor's bad music. Some people live with a hole cut cleanly in their living. If you visit Lachlan House and stand in the hallway outside 8C, you'll hear a room learning to inhale. You'll think it's the stove. You'll think it's the building. You'll think it's the ocean in a country that isn't near one. No one is forcing you to open the blinds. No one is forcing you to stand in the place where views go to begin. But if you do, remember this. A promise is not a view. A window is not a mercy. And some distances aren't meant to be looked into. They're meant to be looked from. We sealed the cracks. We filed the reports. We left the room at 2:16 a.m. exactly. At 2:17, behind a wardrobe screwed to a wall, behind a bookcase filled with names that once meant a person holding a book, the pane breathed. Somewhere, a hallway counted doors it did not have. Somewhere, a number learned to turn itself sideways and live forever. I am the voice in the dark, and this is Whispers at Dark.
They're listening.
When the world sleeps, the whispers never end.